can see it is a very full grid of cars that will be lining up for this second GT Cup Championship race. Here we go. We can now bring you through the grid. It is so yeah, that's row 3 of the grid that we've got now. So the front row of the grid will be the number 88 team ABBA racing car and number 18 for WIP Motorsport. Row 2 of the grid will be Simon Green Motorsport, Lucky Kieran 55, which will be JMH Automotive, which is going to be John Seal. Row 3 of the grid, as we see it there, is number 4 Triple M Motorsport, Graham Tilley, and number 7, which is Raw Motorsport, Ben Dimmock. Row 4 of the grid is going to be 36 Balfe Motorsport, Stuart Proctor will start alongside Scott Sport, which is John Dillon. Row 5 of the grid is going to be CTR Developments and Richard Chamberlain, and number 9, which is the Top Cats racing car started by Jensen Lunn. Row 6 will be Team Hard, Richard Marsh, and SB Engineering, Paul Bailey, with row 7 being the Stanbridge Motorsport Lamborghini started by James Simons alongside another Stanbridge car. Chris Kemp will be on board for part 2 of the race. For part 1 of the race. Stuart Hall for part 2. Row 8 of the grid is Deranged Motorsport, Ollie Brown, and number 1 Orange Motorsport powered by JMH, Simon Orange for the full race. Row 9 sees Gemini Motorsport, Andy Roby, and Scott Sport, Craig Wilkins, who celebrates his 50th birthday today. The 10th row of the grid is Orange Racing powered by JMH, which will be Josh Jackson, and 3, which is Top Cats Racing, Charlotte Gilbert. The 11th row of the grid, Feathers Motorsport, James Guess, and Veluga Motorsport, which is going to be Carl Cavers. Row 12 of the grid is Paddock Motorsport, Mo Ritson, and Signature RV Paddock Motorsport, John Whitehouse, that sits alongside. Row 13 is Mike Price for Balfe Motorsport and Ian Dugan for Fox Motorsport, with row 14 being the second of the Veluga cars, which is Nick Phelps, and Greystone GT, the first of 3 cars for them, Ian Campbell on board. Row 15 for the grid is Enduro Racing, Morgan Tilbrook, and Make It Happen Racing, Stephen Walton. Row 16 is Century Motorsport, David Holloway, and Whitebridge Motorsport, Chris Murphy. Row 17 sees 24/7 Motorsport, James Hillary will start alongside number 22 Greystone GT, it will be Richard Mason. Row 18 is the Orange Racing powered by JMH car of Patrick Collins alongside Century Motorsport, Alex Stevenson. And off the back of the grid, sadly disqualified from the race earlier on today, so goes to the back of the grid for this one, it's Greystone Motorsport and Mark Hupton. So that gives you Mark Hopton. That gives you the full grid for this one. That is the front row of the grid. So Richard Neary on board the ABBA Commercials Mercedes AMG GT3 car took the race earlier on today, took the checkered flag and claimed the overall win, and of course scooped up the top points in the GT3 category. Lining up alongside him is Michael Igoe, who finished second to Richard Neary earlier on today and also runs in the GT3 category. It's not the finishing positions that dictate the grid from earlier on today, it's actually the fastest lap times from that race that give us the grid. Row 2 of the grid, you can see there is the all sort of dark grey black car of Lucky Kira, who moves to the Lamborghini for this year, and alongside it is another Lamborghini, but this car runs in Group GTO. It's John Seal, who started on the front row in the race earlier on, was involved in an early incident which dropped into the tail end of the field, clawed his way back up to 6th place, and then at the final corner was involved in an incident with one of the GT4 category cars, which caused John to end up in the gravel track. He was still classified as a finisher, but it did somewhat hamper his finishing performance earlier on. So there's Richard Neary, big smile from Richard. He'll be handing the car over to his son for part 2 of the race. These two cars, these two drivers will be racing in the British GT Championship. It'll be good to see them out there competing. Richard is, 53 years of age now, and comes from Great Alcar, which is in Lancashire. His son Sam is still only 18 years of age. I think he was the youngest driver to get behind the wheel of a GT3 car and put it on pole position and score a race win in it. He was only 17 years of age, I think, at the time. Started racing in the BMW that they had when he was just 16 years of age. So he's still a very young driver, is Sam, but a very, very quick driver indeed. And he will take over that car for part 2 of the race. And for Michael Igoe, he'll be giving way to 3 times runner-up in the British GT Championship and former Sunoco Challenge winner, Phil Keane. The pro drivers, if they're classified as pros, cannot start the pit stop race. They have to take part in part 2. Stuart Proctor a little slow away at the wheel of the 750S McLaren, but finally gets going. But for any of the other drivers, if they are not categorised as pro, you can decide which driver will start the pit stop race and which one is going to go second. There's someone else very slowly away towards the tail end of the field as well, and I do fear that might be Nick Phelps maybe, who gets the car rolling, but everybody had passed him. So Nick Phelps, I think that's the number 35 car, should now in theory start off the back of the grid because every other car had overtaken him. So if that happens, you have to start at the back of the grid. You cannot take up what for Nick Phelps would be 14th position on the grid. So no doubt the team will be advising him of that, but for the moment he is looking to carve his way through the order, which in my reading of the regulations would suggest that he shouldn't be doing that, but we'll wait and see as to whether that's picked up on by the officials and whether indeed my reading of the regulations is correct, but we'll wait and see. So, safety car bringing them round. Now remember, this is a pit stop race, so it is a 50-minute race, and a change to the regulations this year means we split the pit stops into two groups. So, for today's pit stop race, Group 1 means that we will see the cars in Group GTO, Group GT3 and Group GTC. They will pit between the 24th and the 29th minutes of this race on the formats that we have. So they will come in at that point. And for Group 2, which is cars that run in Group GTB, Group GTH and Group GTA, they will pit between the 29th and the 35th minute of the race. So there's two separate pit stop windows depending on which group you are in. Such are the changes to the regulations for this year. What of Nick Phelps? Is he still trying to work his way through the order, or has he been notified for the team to just hold his position at the tail end of the field? We'll work that one out when we get the race underway, because the lights are out on the safety car and round 2 of the 2021 GT Cup Championship is about to get itself underway here at Donington Park on the national circuit. A 50-minute race with that pit stop window in the middle of it, and with the safety car peeling its way into the pit lane, Richard Neary and Michael Igoe get going on the front row of the grid and propel themselves up towards Redgate Corner. The Mercedes with the Lamborghini to driver's left. Michael Igoe brakes as late as he can, but it's the outside line for him as he heads up towards Redgate Corner, so very little that he can do. Richard Chamberlain, I think, on cold tyres, just lost the car there, and I think John Dillon had also similar problems at the wheel of his Lamborghini and had to head through the gravel trap. Didn't see any contact at the tail end of Richard Chamberlain's car. John Dillon drags himself back out of the gravel. Richard Chamberlain, I do fear, is going nowhere in what are cold ambient conditions here at Donington Park. We were promised a sprinkling of rain earlier on. Oh, that's James Guess, who gets very sideways going through the old hairpin, tries to gather up the GTH Aston Martin, but he's pointing in the wrong direction. It's former Le Mans winner Darren Turner who is scheduled to take over that car for part 2 of the race. Safety car, though, is already coming out, no doubt because of the errant Porsche at Redgate Corner, the orange Porsche of Richard Chamberlain, which I say, I don't think there was any contact. I think it just looked like cold rears, maybe, that the track temperature has just dropped off quite a bit since their race earlier on today, and Richard was just caught out potentially there. So the cars will continue round until the safety car, and that safety car should be peeling its way out of the pit lane any second now. Indeed it is. There it goes to catch the field. So Richard Neary for Michael Igoe. Lucky Kira is there in 3rd. John Seal is 4th. You can see Richard Chamberlain's car somewhat stranded in the gravel. With him being stranded in the gravel, that means that the number 7 car in the hands of Ben Dimmock for this first part of the race has now moved up into 5th position. Stuart Proctor is in 6th place. There's number 77. That's the car that was very sadly disqualified. Such was the decision made by the officials earlier on by a mistake that was made by Mark Hopton, where in his first ever race, unfortunately, he, I think, just made a mistake under braking, and unfortunately that caused an incident, and as a result of that, that car had to start off the back of the grid for this one, so he'll be hoping for better fortunes in this second race. One of 3 cars prepared by Greystone GT, a new team to the championship for this year. Certainly 2 cars are in for the full season. We might see the 3rd car in for a good amount of the season, but Mark Hopton is partnered with former A1GP racer and former BAR Formula 1 test driver Adam Carroll in the number 22 Greystone car. Richard Mason is partnered with the redoubtable John Lancaster, who has done huge amounts of things over his racing career. John Lancaster, including things like being the LMP2 champion of the European Le Mans Series back in 2015. He single-seater career got him as far as GP2, I think, for John Lancaster. And the 3rd car from Greystone is Ian Campbell. He drives the number 23 car, and he is partnered with another former European Le Mans Series champion in LMP2 category. That's the 2014 champion Ollie Webb. So they've got some 3 very good pro drivers sharing the respective GT4 McLarens with them, whilst all of the cars are behind the safety car in one big train. James Guess has now latched himself onto the back of that train of cars following his spin down at the old hairpin. I think as a result of that, Richard Chamberlain's car is the only car, yes, that we've lost. So he was the only casualty in terms of cars that didn't complete the first lap and are now not about to complete the second lap either, in the case of Richard Chamberlain. So safety car out, clock still continuing to tick. Remember, the pit stop window for Group 1 of the GT Cup. Now when I say Group 1, that's for cars that sit in Group GTO as a category, Group GT3 as a category, and Group GTC as a category. They pit first in this race, in this two-day format, so they will conduct their pit stops between the 24th and the 29th minute of the 50-minute race. And for Group 2, which is the cars that run in Group GTB, Group GTH, Group GTA, they will pit slightly later in this race. They will pit between the 29th and the 35th minute of the race. Now, the minimum pit stop time is mandatory to be 60 seconds, plus the time to pass through the pit lane at the requisite speed limit, and that is what they will all be on for this race. There are no success seconds to add because it is the first race of the season. Success seconds come into play for tomorrow's pit stop race. We'll tell you all about that when we get to that point tomorrow. So there's the number 96 car. Good to see it's back after its problems in the race earlier on. That was the car that shed the wheel in the hands of Chris Kemp, who thankfully was at a part of the circuit where the car just sort of plopped itself into the gravel and ran through the gravel, and the tyre sort of wheel bounced against the barriers and then came to a halt. Had it have been somewhere else on track, that could have been a very different accident. So good to see that the car was undamaged, and as a result, Chris Kemp and the Stanbridge Motorsport team are able to get that car back out for the pit stop race without any harm having been done following its problems earlier on. Nice to see such a huge variety. I think 11 different manufacturers represented over the course of this one, but the lights are out on the safety car. Richard Chamberlain's car has been moved out of harm's way, so Richard Neary will now decide as to when he wants to get things back underway. Once he starts to accelerate, then that's it. He's got to keep his foot planted, and we get the race back underway with a good restart from Richard Neary. Michael Igoe, though, is not that far behind, you know. The dark black car is Lucky Kira, who sits there in third place. John Seal in fourth is under attack from Ben Dimmock. Then Stuart Proctor, who tries to outbrake Ben Dimmock in the Radical RXC. Great to see that car in the championship. Tries to outbrake him around the outside at Redgate Corner. Two of them will run together onto towards the top of Hollywood, but he's finally got the job done. Yeah, the McLaren 750S in the hands of Stuart Proctor. Moves his way up through the order, and that will now put him up into fifth position, and means that he will now be looking to try and catch up on the next car that lies ahead, which is the Group GTO leading car in the hands of John Seal. So that's the car that leads its group, under pressure from the number 36 car, which lies fourth in the GT3 group standings in this race. For Stuart Proctor, who shares the car with son Lewis, who will take over for part two, he's under a lot of pressure as he wants to attack. He's got to defend. Richard Neary, in the meantime, is about 0.3 of a second up the road from Michael Igoe. With Lucky Kira going really well, I've got to say. Lucky Kira, we saw racing Group GTC machinery last year, whether it be Ferraris or Porsches, but stepping up to a Group GT3 specification Lamborghini and is running in third place. The Radical tries to jink out in the hands of Ben Dimmock from behind behind Stuart Proctor, but he's just too far away as they head in towards the braking area. So not able to do anything there. Down in towards the braking area for the old hairpin. Ben Dimmock trying to work overtime, trying to attack the car ahead, whilst Michael Igoe is trying to attack the race leader. Richard Neary, nice and neat and tidy though. On this particular lap, Michael Igoe has got the hurry up a little bit. He's, through the first sector of the lap, gone quicker than anybody else had managed to do, at the point that he broke the beam on the first sector of the lap in a straight line. Just looks as though the Mercedes might have a tiny bit more grunt, but on the brakes, the Lamborghini simply looked to close up a little bit more as Michael Igoe was slightly more confident maybe on the brakes going in towards the Robert chicane. The upshot is what was 0.6 of a second as they started that lap comes down to just 0.2 of a second as they end the lap, and Michael Igoe is now almost side by side with Richard Neary as they head in towards the braking area for Redgate Corner. Michael Igoe with the new fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 5.972. And head over the start-finish line now is Richard Marsh at the wheel of the Porsche. I thought it was Richard Marsh in the race earlier on today, but notification was given to me a bit too late to correct the starting drivers. It wasn't Richard Marsh that put that Porsche in the gravel earlier on. It was the unfortunate Sam Randon that had the issue, but Richard Marsh does start this race. Great battles going on. This is Craig Wilkins just managing to bring the Group GTA Ginetta up through and past Mo Ritson, who is driving that fantastic looking McLaren as they head for the 6th time through the old hairpin. The battle still continuing to rage. Bouncing over the curbs goes Mo Ritson. Andy Roby's fabulous looking Marcos Mantis, a bright orange Marcos Mantis. You can't miss it. You can't, whether it be the look of it or the sound of it, is under pressure from the number 67 car, which for this race is going to be Josh Jackson, because that's the car, the number 1 car that Simon Orange drives. They would usually share cars, but it looks as though the way they're carving it up this weekend is that they will both drive solo in the pit stop races. So Simon Orange, as the team owner, gets to choose the new McLaren, whereas Josh Jackson gets the Ginetta, and they will leave it like that, I'm sure, for the rest of the season. Richard Marsh under enormous pressure for 8th position. Paul Bailey in the Ferrari 488, looking one way, looking the other. Nothing doing now. So this is Group GTB leading Porsche, under pressure from the car that is running 9th in the race, but 3rd in the Group GTO category. And right behind them as well is going to be the next of the cars that's trying to work its way through as well. It's the Lamborghini, isn't it, that sits directly below, which is John Dillon, who is now back inside the top 10 following his gravelly moment up at Redgate Corner at the beginning of the race. So Porsche, Ferrari, Lamborghini all together for what is 8th, 9th and 10th places. Paul Bailey has the overlap here, has the inside on Richard Marsh. Through goes the Ferrari, through goes the Lamborghini. Was just a matter of time, really, and trying to work his way through now is Ollie Brown. Well, fantastic job being done by Ollie Brown at the wheel of that Group GTH Aston Martin, just behind the Lamborghini and the Ferrari. You should see the Aston Martin appear into shot, and that is the driver that leads Group GTH at the moment. That's for the GT4 homologated cars. He's also been able to unpick Richard Marsh in the Group GTB leading Porsche. So Richard Marsh might have lost 3 places on that lap, but he still leads Group GTB in this stage, Group GTB being for early challenge and cup cars. So huge grid of cars this weekend, 38 cars, which is a record for GT Cup at Donington Park. It's not an overall record, we have had more at a Brands Hatch A1GP supporting meeting. We are scheduled to have a very bumper grid on the 1st of May at Brands Hatch. We can't accommodate, I think, all of the cars that want to enter, so at the moment there are 4 or 6, I can't recall, reserves for the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit rounds. It's going to be, what, 42, 44 cars on the grid for the next event that we go to down in Kent on the 1st of May. Bouncing over the curbs goes James Hillary at the wheel of the 911 Porsche that he shares with David Frankland. Under pressure though from Morgan Tilbrook, who's trying to propel the Mercedes through and ahead, Group GTH Mercedes, but Morgan Tilbrook's also under pressure from the next of the car that sits behind him, which will be Ian Dugan for Fox Motorsport. Nice to see Ian in the championship. Problems, I'm afraid. That's on the exit of the Robert chicane, and that is John Dillon that's facing the wrong way. So John Dillon in a very dangerous spot. That is right in the firing line, and everybody just needs to be conscious of those yellow flags. John Dillon, I think, will breathe a big sigh of relief that he can get the Lamborghini fired up again and pointed in the right direction, but that's now given Phil Quaife, his co-driver, that will take over that car, a huge amount of work to do. Such a shame for John Dillon. It was all going beautifully well, and all of a sudden it all rather came untangled for the current champion in Group GTC in the GT Cup. He was also the sprint champion last year, was John Dillon. So 38 minutes of the race to go. So it's going to be another 12 minutes before the pit window opens for the first batch of cars to file their way into the pit lane. This is a fight for places down to, just outside of the top 20 we were just briefly looking at there. Paul Cavers in the Porsche, under enormous pressure from Stephen Walton that sits behind, whilst also trying to thread their way through comes James Hillary at the wheel of the Porsche. So this is an inter-group battle, really. The Porsche's in Group GTH because it's a GT4 car, the Ginetta sits in Group GTA, and the Porsche is a Group GTB machine. So 3 entirely different groups, all busy squabbling away, but that's the way that I think GT Cup's going to be for the 2021 season. With such enormous grids, you are always going to have somebody to squabble with. James Hillary looking one way, looking the other. Stephen Walton in the Make It Happen racing Ginetta. Nice to see that they're in for the full season this year. Is not going to let the GTB machine through. So down the straight they'll come. The Porsche in a straight line. It's got 2 wheels on the grass. James Hillary is not lifting off at all. Keeping it planted. Gets past Stephen Walton. Gets up the inside of Carl Cavers as well. 2 places gained for the Porsche, despite the fact for a good chunk of the start-finish line. He got 2 wheels on the grass as he was accelerating, but he might just lose 1 more place to Stephen Walton, perhaps, who, the wheel of the Ginetta, has the inside line coming down through the cradle curve. So 2 places gained, brackets briefly, 1 place lost very shortly thereafter. But you're still net +1 as far as James Hillary is concerned, and that's the important thing. So some great squabbles going on, not least of which still for the lead of the race as well, because Michael Igoe and Richard Neary are still within touching distance of each other. Morgan Tilbrook is trying to fire one up the inside of the former championship winning McLaren, but that's not quite going to work there. Here comes Michael Igoe, now well and truly amongst the traffic. So now is the point where the Lamborghini really needs to press on with it, flashing his lights to try and forewarn the GT4 or GT8 spec cars that he is closing in all of the time. Bouncing over the curbs goes Richard Neary. Needs to crack on with it because he doesn't want to lose too much time to Michael Igoe through the traffic. And Morgan Tilbrook jinks out to try and overtake, then realises he's got the race leaders coming up behind him. So all of a sudden the sensible driving allow those drivers to go back nose to tail again. Now, was there a slight tap there? I do wonder whether for a split second there might have been a slight tap, and maybe John Whitehouse at the wheel of that McLaren, the number 44 car, didn't quite see Michael Igoe trying to squeeze his way through. The upshot is that everybody still continues safely. You can see just how much hard work it is here for Richard Neary to try and unlock the door and gain places. He's trying to get past Mike Price now, the number 90 Bolt Motorsport McLaren, but the second place Mercedes, I think, has had a tougher run of it through the traffic. Largely because I think he just met them in the wrong place more than anything else, but you can see Michael Igoe now has opened up the advantage. The gap was just 0.4 of a second at the start of this lap. Well, it is now going to be the best part of, I would say, maybe 3 or possibly even 4 seconds. That's the kind of effect that the traffic had on Richard Neary on this lap. What kind of effect might it have on Michael Igoe this time through? So he comes over the start-finish line. What was 0.435 of a second from number 18 Lamborghini back to number 88 Mercedes, goes out to 3.941 seconds. So best part of 3.5 seconds lost through the traffic for that number 88 car. And, well, for Sam Neary, who's going to take over the car from his father for part 2 of the race, that's a big deficit to make up when you've got someone like Phil Keane about to jump on board this number 18 Lamborghini for part 2 of the race. The pit window will shortly be opening as well. So, about 8 minutes we'll see the pit window open. Ray Ritson still under pressure from the car that sits directly behind him. That's a good little fight that's going on. What is that in terms of position? The number 26 McLaren. Richard Neary still threading his way through the traffic, still trying to hunt down that deficit that now exists between himself and the race-leading car. So leading the race overall, leading Group GT3 is the number 18 Lamborghini in the hands of Michael Igoe. Second in the race, also in GT3, is number 88 Richard Neary. Third in the race is 247, the Lamborghini of Lucky Kier, also in GT3. Fourth place is the leading car in Group GTO. That's the number 55 Lamborghini in the hands of John Seal, who is about to flash his way over the start-finish line. He's having to deal with all of the traffic at the moment as he works his way up towards Redgate Corner. Then 6th in the race is the McLaren number 36, just going through shot there. And then 7th and 8th are together, which is going to be Ben Dimmock at the wheel of the Radical RXC and the Nissan in the hands of Graham Tilley. Dimmock runs wide coming out of Redgate Corner, and Graham Tilley instantly seizes on the opportunity and works his way through up inside the top 6 now. Other class leaders that we've got, well, Jensen Lunn in 9th place, the number 9 Lamborghini leads Group GTC. Leading Group GTH is Ollie Brown at the wheel of the 52 Aston Martin. Leading Group GTB is Richard Marsh at the wheel of the number 34 Porsche. And leading Group GTA, down in 15th place at the moment, is number 80, which is Craig Wilkins. He claimed a victory in Group GTA earlier on today at the wheel of the Ginetta, and at the moment is leading the group once more. So cars threading their way in what, like ever, slightly gloomier conditions here at Donington Park. Down the straight and in towards the Roberts chicane. This time it's Stuart Proctor that's got all of the cars to try and deal with. He dives past Morgan Tilbrook, also scoots up the inside of the number 19 McLaren in the hands of Mike Price. So more traffic dealt with by Stuart Proctor. John Seal carves his way past both Mercedes and McLaren. Graham Tilley gets past both Mercedes and the light green McLaren as well in the hands of Michael Price, former Porsche racer. So quicker cars slowly working their way through, but everybody just driving sensibly on what is a busy track here at Donington Park, and we are now heading towards the first 20 minutes of the race completed, which means that we are going to start to see the pit stops now occur within the next 5 minutes or so. But of course that is for only some of the cars. When the pit window opens at the 24th minute of the race, then it will only be, such as the format for this year on a 2-day racing format, the Saturday pit stop race, Group 1 coming first. So that is cars in Group GTO, Group GT3 and Group GTC. So arguably the quicker cars in the field pit first. And the likes of the number 90 car, for instance, which runs in Group GTH, will have to wait until the 29th minute of the race at the very earliest to be able to come in. It's just a case of ensuring that the pit stops and the pit window doesn't mean that we have a very congested pit lane. Therefore it's safer for everybody, for the drivers, for the mechanics, for the marshals, that the cars pit at separate intervals. It's not the only category in the UK where we see them split up when the championship gets so popular that it just means that, yeah, safety is always paramount, and anything you can do just to spread those pit stops out means that it's not quite as busy in the pit lane. It's busy enough out on track, isn't it? So Richard Marsh at the wheel of the Group GTB leading Porsche sits down in 14th position. Was a bit higher up at the beginning of the race, but just seems to sort of drop down slightly. No cause for concern, because whilst he's 14th and leads the group, then the car that's second in the group is down in 18th position, which is that car there, just going through shot, the Marcos Mantis, the silver car with its Dayglow orange flashes, or Dayglow green rather flashes. So that's Charlotte Gilbert. Lucky Kira still working his way past traffic. Craig Wilkins and the number 67 car in the hands of for this race. Now that's going to be a change, isn't it? Because that's Josh Jackson now that's ahead of Craig Wilkins. So there's been a change for the lead of Group GTA. The orange Ginetta coming towards us now is now ahead of the red and Dayglow yellow Ginetta behind. So that's the change for the lead of Group GTA that we've had. James Guest dives at the inside of Morgan Tilbrook. Remember the number 82 Feathers Motorsport Aston Martin had a problem earlier on and had the spin down at the old hairpin. So the white and blue car with its Dayglow orange flashes, number 82 gaining a place over Morgan Tilbrook's Mercedes that sits right behind it. Morgan not at the wheel of the car he was expecting to drive this weekend, but they did have another GT4 Mercedes, identical specification available to them, so dropped into the spare car after problems this morning. As a result of changing car, they had to start the first race off the back of the grid. But in this race, Morgan has been going beautifully well, starting on the 15th row, 29th position, and at the wheel of that number 66 car has now running in 26th position, so a couple of places picked up, 3 places. Now James Guess is about to attack the next of the cars, which is going to be Mike Price. Can't quite get past Mike Price on the run towards Coppice Corner. Morgan Tilbrook makes a mistake. The tail end of the Mercedes almost gets away from him. Ian Dugan is going to be able to go through as a result of that, but it was well gathered up by Morgan Tilbrook there, because he almost lost the tail end of the car there and just about gathered it up. I think the other car that was looking to try and go through was potentially David Holloway's car, the Aston Martin. But yeah, good driving by Morgan Tilbrook. Just about managed to hang on to it. And no harm done as such. So through went the number 15 car, which was David Holloway, and Ian Dugan as well. So 2 places lost there with that very small mistake. Could have been far worse. For number 88, Richard Neary, well, he's now 4 seconds adrift of the race leader, Michael Igoe, and it is only a minute and 50 seconds before the pit window opens now. On the basis of these are arguably the slower of the driver pairings behind the wheel now. Get the pro in as soon as you possibly can, which means that they get a lot longer to crack on. Right, 5-second penalty for overtaking under the safety car for car number 52, which is Ollie Brown. Well, that's a Group GTH leader. For car number 22, also for overtaking under the safety car. Quite what's been going on, I'm not entirely sure. That is going to be Richard Mason, having his 2nd ever race at the wheel of Greystone GT McLaren. And also car number 96, which is the car that retired earlier on when it lost the wheel, which is going to be Chris Kemp. Off and into the gravel, I'm afraid. That's Charlotte Gilbert that's gone off, and this is just potentially when the pit window opens. So if this brings about a safety car, we are going to see everybody descending to the pits immediately. So Charlotte Gilbert off and in the gravel. She had an off at Coppice this morning, unfortunately, in free practice, which delayed her participation in the qualifying session. And I'm afraid for Charlotte, yeah, another off and into the gravel for her is not the way that she wanted to end the day. So still lots of traffic to be dealt with by our front runners. The Radical RXC trying to thread its way through the traffic. We're looking at John Seal now, who carves his way past the Jason Orange-driven Group GTH McLaren. Jason stays well and truly out of the way, allows Graham Tilley to go through as well. So sensible driving by the reigning champion, Jason Orange, running in 13th position, making sure that he just stays out of the way. The progress for James Guess as well. Well, he's now managed to catch the car that won the championship a couple of years ago. He's alongside John Whitehouse. Aston Martin's got the inside line. James Guess, is he going to dive his way through? Yes, he does. Place gained for number 82, James Guess, who is now up to 5th in class, just as the safety car comes out, I'm afraid. So I did wonder if the issues with Charlotte Gilbert's car, which I think was at Redgate Corner, would bring about the safety car. And it certainly looks as though that is the case. So the safety car is threading its way out onto track now, and in the background Michael Igoe instantly comes into the pit lane. So the pit window had opened by 17 seconds, so he was probably scheduled to come in on this lap anyway, but Michael Igoe heads in towards the pit lane, vacates the lead of the race, and is about to hand over the car to Phil Keane, whilst Charlotte Gilbert's Marcos Mantis sits rather forlornly in the Redgate gravel trap. So Michael Igoe out of the car. Paul Bailey has come in as well. This will be to hand over to Ross Wiley for part 2 of the race. So that's Paul Bailey in. Michael Igoe, we know for sure, has come into the pit lane. I think I've also seen Chris Kemp come in. Yeah, Chris Kemp is coming in. Lucky Kira heads towards the pit lane. Number 9 is in, which is Jensen Lund, to give way to Warren Gilbert. So, yeah, they're all piling, not unsurprisingly, Graham Tilley is in. They're all piling into the pit lane. I thought that would be the case if we had a safety car come out. John Seal, I think, has come in. Yeah, that's to hand over to Abby Eaton. Great to see Abby out behind the wheel of that car. Ben Dimmock has come in to hand over to Steve Burgess at the wheel of the Radical RXC. So nearly everybody, understandably, from Group GTO, Group GT3 and Group GTC, who were all eligible to pit in this first pit window, can come in. So it's a 5-minute pit window for the first batch of cars. It's a 6-minute pit window for the second batch of cars, because Group GTB, Group GTH and Group GTA have more cars in total in the entry list this weekend than Group GTO, Group GT3, Group GTC have. They're both very full, rest assured, but it just allows an even split, really, of the respective groups. So that is going to shuffle the order for the lead, and is now going to put, well, I think Richard Neary in the lead, because he didn't pit. I don't think Richard Neary came into the pit, but surely will at the end of this lap. So the safety car is waving everybody by. Didn't Cheap John Dillon come in either to hand over the Lamborghini? That's a GT3 car, so it could come in and be handed over to Phil Quaife, who will take over that car, and indeed does at the end of that lap. So the number 61 car, John Dillon, also dives his way into the pit lane, which I think now means, right, that's problems. That's Ian Dugan that's had a problem under the safety car, Ian Dugan, and that car just seems to sort of snap away from him rather curiously. So Ian Dugan, who has moved up to race one of the more powerful Ginetta G55s, running for Fox Motorsport. Problems for him.
Issue. It looks like the lights have gone off and they're going to get it started again. Which car
so in the pit lane we briefly saw still John Dillon giving way to Phil Quaife. Haven't seen that car head back out there yet. Richard Neary has still not pitted either at the wheel of the number 88 Mercedes, so he still continues to lead and has a 50-second lead now over Stuart Proctor, Lewis Proctor, sorry, who's in second place. So he's just taken over the car from his father. Where are we going to see feedback out? There's Charlotte Gilbert's car being towed out of harm's way, which brought about this safety car period. So yeah, so that's the race leader at this stage. And of course all of the cars behind will be off the lead lap because they run in the likes of Group GTH, Group GTB, Group GTA, but haven't pitted as yet. They will have to pit when the pit window opens for them. That opens in about 60 seconds time. So the Group 1 pit window closes at exactly the same point as the Group 2 pit window opens, if that makes sense. So the cars in GTO, GT3 and GTC must have completed their pit stops in the next 50 seconds or so, or started their pit stops in the next 50 seconds or so, and in the next 50 seconds or so, that's when we can start to see the cars from Group GTB, Group GTA and Group GTH all file their way into the pit lane. Now, Charlotte Gilbert's car is out of harm's way, so we should be able to get the race back underway. Into the pit lane now, at the end of the safety car period, comes Richard Neary, so that really didn't work out for Richard and Sam Neary, which means that now the lead of the race should be the number 36 McLaren at this stage, but the battles elsewhere for the lower categories are going to be raging. But I think all of these cars will now come into the pit lane next time through, because the second pit window will be opening in about 15 seconds time. So there is erstwhile race leader Richard Neary out of the car, son Sam Neary, just 18 years of age, about to get in, but pitting whilst the safety car was not out is really going to undo all of the hard work that Richard had done in the early stages of the race to move his way up into second position. Jason Orange under huge pressure from Mo Ritson. This is going to be for cars that are running in Group GTH. Mo Ritson fires one up the inside at Coppice Corner and is able to sneak his way through and ahead of the champion. So that is going to be, for the moment, for second and third in Group GTH, because it's Ollie Brown in the white Aston Martin that leads the group. But he is a driver that, remember, was given a 5-second penalty, wasn't he, for overtaking under the safety car. So but that is a good overtake at the sharp end. In fact, Ollie Brown comes into the pit lane, and everybody else from the Group GTB, GTH and GTA battles are all filing their way now into the pit lane. So just going to shuffle the order game for a while longer. So they all lead their way into the pit lane. In comes James Guess, in comes John Whitehouse. So James Guess will hand over to Darren Turner. For the likes of John Whitehouse, he'll be handing over to Steve Ruston. Number 15 car comes in. This is David Holloway handing over to former British GT champion Bradley Ellis. But for the number 18 Lamborghini, now safely in the hands of Phil Keane, it is looking to try and work its way back through the order. Michael Igoe brought that car into the pit lane in the lead of the race. Well, I'm not sure where they are now in the race because of the shuffling of all of the pit stops. It looks as though, at the moment, according to our screens, that car might have lost a lap somewhere, but not entirely sure where that would be the case. 5-second penalty for track limits for car number 7, I'm afraid to say. So that is the Radical RXC of Ben Dimmock and Steve Burgess. So that will have 5 seconds added to its race time. The first of the cars to pit in this sort of second pit window now trundling its way down the pit lane, which is Nick Phelps, I believe. But for Phil Keane, that car is showing on the timing screens as being down in 8th position at this stage, which is very curious as to how it's ended up there. Pit lane slowly emptying as the GT A, GTB and GTH cars work their way out of pit lane. Group GTB is for early model challenge cars, Group GTA is for lower specification Cup cars, so really nowadays it's Ginetta G55s that run the Super Cup specification, i.e. BTCC Support Championship, and Group GTH is for cars that are homologated to GT4 regulations, of which that is one of them. That is James Guess about to give way to number 82, Darren Turner, for part 2 of the race. Darren Turner, who is a Le Mans winner, won the GT1 category at Le Mans with Aston Martin as a works driver in 2007-2008. He was the European Le Mans Series GTE champion in 2016. He's a class winner at the Nürburgring 24 Hour as well, is Darren Turner. And you look at what he's done over the years, it's absolutely staggering. Runner-up in FIA GT1, runner-up in Formula Parma Audi, but he's raced in touring cars, American Le Mans Series, ASCAR, DTM, Formula 3000, McLaren test driver for a period of time. Great to have him in the championship, and let's see how he gets on behind the wheel of that Feathers Motorsport Aston Martin for part 2 of the race. Down through the Craner curves comes Abby Eaton. Now the number 55 Lamborghini is currently in 2nd position, but on that lap through the first sector, Abby Eaton has just set a purple time, so has gone quicker than anybody has managed through the first sector. That's already been bettered by Phil Keane, who's a bit further down through the lap. Phil Keane's first flying lap in typical Phil Keane fashion. 3 times a runner-up in the British GT Championship, Phil Keane. 1 minute 4.952, his first flying lap. Fastest lap of the race for the number 18 Lamborghini. So, side by side out of Coppice Corner. This is Will Tregurtha, former British GT champion in the GT4 category, diving past Andy Roby's car whilst being under pressure from the pro driver that sits behind, which is Stuart Hall, at the wheel of the number 96 Lamborghini. A few more cars dive for the pit lane. Charlotte Gilbert is in. Also, Andy Roby is in. We've got the Make It Happen Ginetta in the pit lane as well, looking at the shot. But we've got this queue of Lamborghinis, haven't we, going through Redgate Corner with the Ferrari of Ross Wiley, the Scotsman, sitting on the tail end. So down through the Craner curves, Ross Wiley at the wheel of the Ferrari, trying to hoist that car up through the order. This is the Make It Happen Ginetta being handed over to Chris Hart for part 2 of the race. Chris Hart, a former Clubman's racer, did a bit of racing in Fun Cup and a bit of racing in Mazda MX-5s as well, did Chris Hart, if memory serves me correctly. But the race leader, which is the McLaren, the Balfe Motorsport McLaren, team that are based on the Lincolnshire-Nottinghamshire border, in the hands of Lewis Proctor, going beautifully well. Phil Keane with the fastest lap, however, 1:04.933. Lewis Proctor comfortably in the lead by almost 6 seconds now, so McLaren leads Lamborghini. Relative gaps between them. Well, it was a 1:05.5 second lap from Lewis Proctor. It's a 1:05.8 from Abby Eaton that sits behind. This is a great fight that's going on over the start-finish line. Now is 3 Lamborghinis being hounded by Ross Wiley in that Ferrari. So it's Phil Quaife attacking Lucky Keir, and Lucky Keir is trying to attack the number 9 car, which is now, for this part of the race, going to be Warren Gilbert. So we've got the GTC spec Lamborghini under attack from a GT3 spec Lamborghini, a GT3 spec Lamborghini, and then a GTO specification Ferrari. So good driving being done. I've got to be remarkably impressed by what Top Cats Racing have done. They had a great race earlier on when Jensen Lund picked up the Group GTC honours in the sprint race, and they are leading Group GTC comfortably in this one. As Lucky Keira looks up the inside, is there room? He bounces over the curbs. Phil Quaife takes the opportunity to drive around the outside of Lucky Keira and picks up the spot, and now has enough momentum to draw himself alongside Warren Gilbert's car. Now, the Super Trofeo spec Lamborghinis don't have the same aero as a GT3 car, but they do have more power, bizarrely. So not the easiest things to get through and past the Super Trofeo spec Lamborghini, and now both of them have gone through. Phil Quaife has gone through, Lucky Keira has gone through, and now Ross Wiley is also looking to try and squeeze the Ferrari through and ahead if he can. Ross Wiley is another former British GT champion. He secured honours in the GT4 category with Beechdean back in 2014, I think it was. Yeah, Jake Giddings, wasn't it, was his teammate, so it would have been 2014. As over the last few years been racing in the Porsche Carrera Cup GB, finished 7th in the category standings for the Porsche Carrera Cup GB last year, did Ross Wiley, but going well at the wheel of the Ferrari. Might be running in a group it really shouldn't be running in this weekend, but because originally they should have been himself and Paul Bailey racing the Brabham, but the Brabham had engine issues and has gone away to have a new engine in it, so they brought this Ferrari in and were undecided as to whether to run it in Group GTC and then it'd have to stay there for the season, or run it in Group GTO this weekend. Struggle with the performance of it because it's not really a GTO car, but just pick up some points and then get the Brabham back for Brands and really mount a challenge on the GTO title. Great driving here side by side. This is Marcus Clutton trying to pick off Steve Ruston, former champion. The pro driver Marcus Clutton should be able to go through at the wheel of the Mercedes. Yes, he does. And also Darren Turner, another pro driver, follows him through. So Marcus Clutton, another former British GT champion, by the way. We've got so many former British GT champions in it. Marcus Clutton was back in the old Supersport days when we had the Supersport class that existed. But he's a very quick driver, Marcus Clutton. We saw him racing in the GT Cup last year with John Seal on occasions. They move out of harm's way and allow Phil Keane to place a lap on them at the wheel of what is now the 7th place number 18 Lamborghini. Quite where it lost the time. Can only have been in the pit stop, really, because it was leading quite comfortably, wasn't it? And then he pitted, and that was it. Now, towards Redgate Corner, we've got 12.5 minutes to go. The pit stops are all over, so this is the fight towards the end now for the number 44 McLaren. Mirrors full, really, because Steve Ruston has got Adam Carroll, it will be behind. Now, side by side, down through the Craner curves, Darren Turner has managed to pick the pocket of Marcus Clutton's number 66 Mercedes, so place gain there for Darren Turner. That now moves the Aston Martin up into 24th position and 9th in class. It's the car that had the spin in the hands of James Guess early on, and that, I saw it come down the pit lane, I'm afraid, looks like retirement for the Make It Happen Ginetta of Chris Hart. Hasn't long gone behind the wheel of that car, I'm afraid, but looks as though whatever the problem is, it's just gone rather wrong for them. Up towards Redgate Corner, Tom Rawlings coming under pressure from the Ginetta that resides behind, which is going to be Josh Jackson still. He's going solo in that car for the course of this weekend. And that's going to be for 13th and 14th positions. So Tom Rawlings running second in Group GTH, 13th overall. And Josh Jackson leading Group GTA at the wheel of that number 67 Ginetta. So leading the group and just making sure that he picks up maximum points as far as he's concerned. As long as you win your group, that's the points that you then pick up. So subject to the number of starters in the group, 3 starters or more, it's 25 points if you win your group, 18 for second, 15 for third, and so it diminishes. And I think in the case of all of the groups, they've all had 3 starters in this race, so it should be maximum championship points for every single category in the GT Cup Championship this weekend. Now, 3rd and 4th place getting themselves together. This is the Group GTO leading Lamborghini Huracan in the hands of Abby Eaton, under pressure from the Nissan Nismo GTR of Will Tregurtha. So Abby Eaton scheduled to race in W Series this year, the single-seater category, the all-female single-seater category, which is supporting Grand Prix on several occasions, has historically supported the likes of the DTM Championship, the German Touring Cars Championship, but Abby Eaton getting the opportunity to race at that. We've seen her racing in Blancpain in the past, where she really made a fantastic impression in a Ferrari Monza, I think it was, season or so ago. She's actually done some racing down in Australia, in not the top level of Australian touring cars, but the level just below, and made a fantastic impression there. You might notice her from the Grand Tour as well, and she is certainly the former Mazda MX-5 champion, trying to keep the former British GT champion Will Tregurtha right behind. Will Tregurtha, a runner-up in the European GT4 Championship as well, the year after he claimed the GT4 crown in the UK. He's doing a really good job of hounding all of the way Abby Eaton, but she'll have none of it. There's traffic to deal with here. That is going to be Adam Carroll at the wheel of the number 77 car, the former A1 GP champion that she is able to pick off. Next of the cars is going to be multiple Ginetta champion, number 6 James Kellett, who for Century Motorsport needs to get out of harm's way, because Abby Eaton will take no prisoners. She'll want to scythe her way through as quickly as she possibly can, and then she tries to sneak up the inside of the next to the McLarens, which is going to be Steve Ruston's car, and deals with that through Coppice Corner. Whereas for Will Tregurtha, he's just got to wait until the exit of the corner before he can finally get the job done. So that is the race front runners through. Look how busy Redgate Corner is, with Lewis Proctor at the wheel of that number 36 McLaren having to pick his way through the traffic. Andy Roby's Marcus Mantis is the next thing he's going to want to try and carve his way through. But it is a very, very busy lap now for Lewis Proctor. After he's got past Andy Roby's car, the next of the cars he's going to want to deal with is another Marcus Mantis now, Charlotte Gilbert, who is only just up the road as well, having had her Gramley excursion at Redgate Corner, which briefly brought about the safety car. But no matter where you look, there are squabbles to be had in this race. Through McLean's Corner, down the short straight that brings you up towards the blind entry and the double apex right-hander at Coppice Corner. You can see Lewis Proctor just having to bide his time to work his way through the traffic. There goes John Lancaster at the wheel of the number 22 McLaren. Say another hugely experienced racer is John Lancaster. Good to have him in the series. Say a former European Le Mans Series champion. Another driver that also raced quite high up in the ranks of single-seaters as well. Raced in Auto GP, which is the old A1 GP cars. Got to GP2. Did World Series by Renault. We saw him in European Formula 3, racing at Macau as well. But he's got the number 22 GT4 McLaren as it is his disposal for this weekend. And that sort of sits towards the tail end of this pack. There it goes through there, with Abby Eaton trying to, I think, now get past John Lancaster. Well, Lewis Proctor has now dealt with the traffic, so from having a very, very busy lap, finally, Lewis Proctor can relax a little bit and enjoy what is a 3.5 second lead that he has now between himself and the number 55 Lamborghini of Abby Eaton. Will Tregurtha's Nissan sits there in 3rd position. Lucky Kira at the wheel of the Lamborghini is a long way off in 4th place. He's about 14 seconds adrift of the Nissan. So it certainly looks as though the top 3 for the moment are sorted, but any slip at all through the traffic and it could all change in the blink of an eye. As for other battles down through the order, Just having a quick look. Group GTH looked as though it was close, but no, it certainly looks as though Jason Orange is now 4 seconds up the road leading Group GTH. Group GTA, there's about 5 seconds now between Josh Jackson and Aaron Scott, but that will be coming down, so it could be worth watching Group GTA battling another few laps, because Aaron Scott is closing about a second a lap on the number 67 Orange Ginetta. But there's just no respite, is there? Donington Park National Circuit is just under 2 miles. It is 2.979 miles, and no matter where you look, there is just an enormous crowd of cars, which means for Abby Eaton and Will Tregurtha, who are now absolutely together for 2nd and 3rd place, there's just no let-up, is there? The ability to have to just overtake so effectively, so efficiently through Bradley Ellis and past the Aston Martin GT4 they go in the hands of the former British GT champion. Abby Eaton, even if the Nissan gets through, will still be leading Group GTO. So it doesn't matter almost if the Nissan gets past, it would still be a win in the group potentially for herself and John Seal, but they want to finish 2nd on the road overall, not 3rd if they can help it. And last time through we had another new fastest lap of the race. Sam Neary, with a 1 minute 4.8 exactly, pops in the quickest lap of the race. That's the number 88 Mercedes, which was right at the sharp end, but they, rather than pitted during the safety car, they pitted at the end of the safety car, and that's really what sort of undone the progress really of that car. Over the start-finish line, Abby Eaton again under pressure from Will Tregurtha, trying to muscle the Nissan alongside whilst they try and carve their way past one of the many Lamborghinis that we've got in the field at the same time. And it is still Abby Eaton that is just ahead of Will Tregurtha. 5 minutes still to go. Is she going to be able to do anything about it? The Lamborghini they carved their way past, I think, was Fraser Smart with number 41 Stanbridge Motorsport Lamborghini. That's the car that's running way down through the order now, following problems earlier on in the race. But for Abby Eaton, just needing to drive as quickly as she can now. At the moment, Abby Eaton is 1 minute 6.8 and picks up the next little car to try and sneak through. That's Callum McLeod, who is driving the GT4 car. So that's another car placed a lap down. Phil Keane with the new fastest lap of the race, so it keeps bouncing around, doesn't it, this fastest lap of the race. Right, okay, all of a sudden, I did wonder, had the transponder gone down on Michael Igoe and Phil Keane's car, because it had lost a lap, and I don't know where it dropped down through the order, but it is now showing as being in the lead of the race on our timing screens, which to me makes more sense. So Phil Keane leading the race now by 16.3 seconds. Sorry for the confusion, but all I can see are the pictures and look at the timing screen and just have to assume that the car had a problem in the pit lane, and that was why it came out late. But I think the transponder must have failed on that car briefly, and now the timekeepers have corrected it, and all of a sudden Phil Keane and Michael Igoe are showing as in the lead of the race by 16 seconds over the Lewis Proctor-driven McLaren, which means that Abby Eaton and Will Tregurtha now are fighting over the final podium spot in reality. 4 minutes to go. Darren Turner still trying to pick up places. This is Nick Phelps that is trying to squeeze his way through and past. So the GT4 Aston Martin trying to get past the GTB specification Porsche. And as they now turn their way through McLean's corner, yet through goes the number 82 Aston Martin. I think also trying to follow him through will be the Lamborghini as well that's going to try and sneak through. That's the number 96 going in the hands of Stuart Hall for part 2 of the race. Stuart Hall again, another one of those drivers with a hugely impressive CV. He'll be racing in the World GT Challenge with Audi Sport WRT this year, but he's come 4th overall at Le Mans in the past. Back in 2007, chunk of racing, not just in the World Endurance Championship, but in the European Le Mans Series, historic Formula 1 as well. We saw him in British GT, British Formula 3, did a bit of Formula Renault. I think he was a Winter Series champion, so hugely impressive CV for Stuart Hall, who drives the number 96 Lamborghini, sits 9th overall and leads Group GTC now, so he's managed to, over the course of the last few laps, get through and ahead of Warren Gilbert and pull away. So that number 96 Lamborghini now leads the Group GTC standings and has hoisted itself inside the top 10. What his lap time's doing? The last lap was through traffic, so that's not really a benchmark. So now he's got clear track, might be able to maybe just catch the next car ahead, which would be Phil Quaife. But Phil Quaife is a pro as well, and that's the difficult things now. We've got the pros behind the wheel, is that they're all quick, they're all so consistent. It makes it very difficult to gain many places. 2 minutes to go. Marcus Clutton with his hands full as he bounces the Mercedes over the curb, watches his mirrors because he's got Steve Burgess, the Nottinghamshire-based company director, looking to try and squeeze his way through. at the wheel of the Radical RXC and has made it through. Darren Turner also utilising as much of the curbs at the wheel of the Feathers Motorsport number 82 Aston as he can. So up towards Redgate Corner comes Stuart Hall. They're nearly 3 wide further back. Marcus Clutton has lost the radiator grille on the Mercedes, which tells you how hard he's been pushing. Maybe there's been a little bit of contact somewhere that's just dislodged it. We've also got John Lancaster at the wheel of the white and red McLaren, now looking to try and move his way up through the order, but he's under attack at the same time from cars that are trying to lap him, which is Ross Wiley at the wheel of the Ferrari. So battles from cars being lapped, battles with cars on the same lap, and other battles where cars are on different laps, but you've then got race leaders coming through to lap them all again. So it really is difficult to just pick your moment and try and thread your way through. And I've got to say, on what has been a very busy Donington Park National Circuit, everybody has done admirably well in this race, because other than the little off for Richard Chamberlain at the beginning and Charlotte Gilbert depositing her car in the gravel trap, I haven't really seen anything at all that's been any cause for concern in particular. Let's hope that it remains that way for the final few seconds, because we are now on pretty much the last lap of the race before too much longer. I think Phil Keane will get over the start-finish line to start the last lap of the race. Any second he'll be over the start-finish line, so we might just squeeze one further lap in. Being the case, it's been an impressive drive from Michael Igo and Phil Keane. There they go now, yeah, 20 seconds to go towards Redgate Corner. So they are now onto their last lap of the race. Not quite sure what caused them to tumble down through the order, other than something like an issue with the electronic transponder not registering a lap, and then our timekeepers, TSL-Time Time, picking up on that and then reinstating them back into their respective positions. But the racers, other than that slight issue, gone to plan for them. Since taking the lead of the race, Michael Igo, and handing the car over to Phil Keane, has been pretty much plain sailing for this pairing. So we saw Michael Igo in the GT Cup Championship last year. We saw Phil Keane in it, but the two of them didn't race together. They are partnered up for this season, not for the full season at the moment in GT Cup, but certainly for a full season in the British GT Championship, which visits here Donington Park later on in the year. And for the pairing of Michael Igo and Phil Keane, it looks as though they are going to draw first blood in terms of wins in the 2021 GT Cup Championship pit stop races. Over the start finish line comes Phil Keane. It's a win for Michael Igo and Phil Keane. They scoop up the GT3 group in the process as well, finishing second in the race, but somewhere adrift is going to be the number 36 McLaren of Stewart and Lewis Proctor, and this is the fight for the final podium spots. Abby Eaton at the wheel of the Lamborghini has just held off the aspirations of Will Tregurtha, so Abby Eaton, partnered by John Seal, come home and finish in third place and will secure the group win in Group GTO, with Graham Tilley and Will Tregurtha finishing in fourth place overall. Fifth place should be another Group GTO car, which will be the Steve Burgess and Ben Dimmock driven Radical, but this car here, the number 67 car, is going to be the Group GTA winner, so it's going to be a win for Josh Jackson in Group GTA, and just ahead of him is Simon Orange, his teammate. The two of them took the championship together last year, so Simon Orange finishes 12th and wins Group GTH, finishing 13th, but winning Group GTA is Josh Jackson, so that's a good result for this brand new team for this season. Orange Racing, powered by JMH, is what they're officially called, so it's Jason Orange's team that he's set up, but utilising the technical expertise of JMH Automotive, who've been long-time supporters of the GT Cup Championship. So the last few cars just trickling their way over the start-finish line, and then we should be able to bring you through the results for this. We'll have Michelle Livings joining us tomorrow, so we should be able to pick up some reaction, both pre-race and post-race, from the drivers and the pit lane. But we don't have Michelle today, but that car there is our first pit stop race winner of the 2020 season. Michael Igo with a great job in the early stages of the race, handing it over to Phil Keane, and well, other than a slight technical issue with their transpondering not registering a lap, they have led the vast majority of the GT Cup Championship race when you remove that sort of mechanical, electrical error with the timing system that we saw briefly. So the car's thundering their way back into the pit lane, ready to be serviced and prepared, ready to do it all again tomorrow. Let's bring you through the results for our first pit stop race of the 2021 season in the GT Cup Championship. It's a win for WIP Motorsport and their Lamborghini Huracan. From the Balf Motorsport father and son pairing of the Proctors in second place. JMH Automotive win Group GTO with John Seal and Abby Eaton in third place, and fourth place it was Triple M Motorsport. Fifth place went to Raw Motorsport and the Radical, and in sixth place it was Simon Green Motorsport, which will be Lucky Kira. Seventh place in the end for Team ABBA, who started from pole position. Eighth place for the Scott Sport Lamborghini, which will be John Dillon and Phil Quaith. Ninth place for Stanbridge Motorsport, and completing the top 10 was SB Racing. In 11th place, that's Top Cats Racing that finished in 11th place. Team Hard with their Group GTB Porsche were in 12th position. That I think means they claim the win in that. Yes, they do in Group GTB. 13th and 14th were also winners in Group GTH and Group GTA respectively for Orange Racing powered by JMH. Scott Sport finished in 15th place with Paddock Motorsport in 16th, and then it was Balf, Century, Veluga and Feathers Motorsport that wrap up the top 20 in the first of the pit stop races of the weekend. In 21st position, Greystone Motorsport and Jura Motorsport with the Mercedes were 22nd, ahead of the second of the two Greystone cars. Deranged Motorsport were 24th, ahead of Century Motorsport. Andy Roby and Gemini Motorsport and the Marcos Mantis were 26th. Then it was Greystone Fox, Signature Motorsport, RV stroke Paddock Motorsport and Whitebridge Motorsport, which will be Chris Murphy, who finished in 30th position. Outside of the top 30, we then start to get into some of the cars that had problems or finished several laps down, including Stanbridge Motorsport 24/7, Orange powered by JMH, and of course we did see in 34th place Make It Happen head towards the pit lane, and we know for the bottom two at least, for Top Cats Racing and CTR Developments, there were trips into the gravel. So that was the way it worked itself out in this first pit stop race of the season for the GT Cup Championship here at Donington Park. It was a win for Phil Keane and Michael Igo in the first of the pit stop races. Don't forget though, we will do it all again tomorrow here at Donington Park. We will be live with the sprint race at around about 20 past 1 in the afternoon for the GT Cup, and then we will have a further pit stop race tomorrow afternoon. We're scheduled to bring the stream live at around about 20 past 5 tomorrow evening. So from everybody here at Donington Park and the GT Cup Championship, including Butte Motorsport, thanks for joining us today. We'll catch you again tomorrow, day 2 at Donington Park.